Okay, so we already looked at the men and determined who were the best triathlon cyclists of the past and the present. And not all of you agreed with my selections, and I'm sure you won't again today, because it is time to pick who were the best women, the walk queens of triathlon, who are the best on two wheels. And this one, I've got to be honest, was even more of a challenge than the men's, and I didn't think that would be the case. But as we did before, let's break it down and let's start off in the past. And it's hard to start off with this one because she's so recently retired, but we have to because she's the greatest of all time. She's the Angry Bird. It's Daniela Ryf of Switzerland. Thankfully, this is an easy one because without a doubt, she's the best cyclist in our sports history. I mean, 10-time world champion, and you'd have to say, thanks so much to her power on the bike. And you probably wouldn't have guessed that she would have this reign of dominance as she did, coming from the short course background that she had, where she had some success, but not as good a success as we saw in the long distance. She did make it to 2 Olympics, however. 7th was her highest finish. But to me, even a 7th at the Olympics pales in comparison to what she did in 2018 in Kona. I think that is her crown jewel of all of her performances, where after being stung by a jellyfish in the swim, she somehow biked a 4:26, which is a record I think is going to stand for quite a bit longer. She turned around at Javi and she rode insanely fast back into town. She outsplit a lot of the men racing that day and broke her own course record and bringing the record down below 8:30, which had never been done before. It's probably the greatest ride we've ever seen, and it was definitely Daniela's best performance in my opinion, even though her 2023 Roth 808 was pretty close to a perfect performance as well, beating Chrissy Wellington's record from 2011. Unbelievably, she rode 4:22 there, and that was 17 minutes faster than Anne Haug on the day. It's just such a pity we couldn't see her give a full last effort in her last year in the sport. She wasn't able to make it to the Nice World Championships, and it would have been so good to see what she could have done that course as the previous 70.3 world champion on that course in 2019. But what a legend she was. She changed the sport, and it's going to take someone equally as legendary to take her spot as the greatest of all time. But the others on this list certainly rank up there as the greatest cyclists, and 2 of them also come from Switzerland like Daniela. That's Carolyn Steffen and Karin Thürig. And we'll start off with Carolyn, who was nicknamed Xena after the Xena Warrior Princess TV character. She was just a different person, she said. When she had the chip on her ankle, she said she felt like 2 totally different people. She's the 2-time IT world champion, Roth champion as well, and 2-time Kona runner-up. She was so close to winning in 2012, and everybody says she probably would have won it if she didn't receive the 4-minute drafting penalty on the bike that was caused, she believes, in part by a male joining in on the group that she was in. And when she made the pass of that male, she was just too close to the female ahead of him. So that was just a controversial loss for her, losing in the final miles of the marathon. But still, what she did consistently year on year on the bike leg was so impressive. And in doing some research on her, one of the workouts that she used to recommend to people was this 3x30-minute set that she would do 3 times, where she'd have a 15-minute warm-up at the beginning, then she'd do 30 minutes at Ironman pace, 30 minutes at 70.3 pace, and 30 minutes at Olympic distance pace. 3 times over, so that would be a 6-hour set. I mean, that sounds brutal. So it's no surprise she had the strength that she did on 2 wheels. But surprisingly, could not outride Karin Thürig. She is the original Cameron Wurf who wanted to do it all. She was quoted saying she was the winner of the 2004 and 2005 UCI Road World Championships in the time trial. She was 3rd twice at the time trial as well at the Olympic Games. And yeah, world champion in duathlon in 2001 and 2002. And then somehow, while balancing all the pro cycling that she was doing, she was winning Ironman races left, right, and center. And she probably would have won even more, probably including Kona, if she would have had her swim just slightly up to par. But she did take a 2nd place in 2011 at the 70.3 World Championships, and she broke the Kona course record that stood since 1993 in 2010. She barely broke it then, but then in 2011 she improved that by 4 more minutes until Daniela Ryf broke it eventually. But just an unbelievable time trialist who somehow balanced doing pro cycling, duathlon, and triathlon, and I don't think her name's been talked about enough because doing some research on her, she is seriously impressive. But going back to that bike course record that stood since 1993, that belonged to Paula Newby-Fraser, the queen of Kona. I'm sure you've all heard of her before. She won Kona 8 times. Nobody else has been able to match that. And she, like Mark Allen and Dave Scott, was the one who really transformed this sport for the women, just consistently pushing the time down for the women in Kona. She was good across all 3 sports. And just like Mark Allen had Dave Scott and Dave Scott had Mark Allen, Paula Newby-Fraser had Erin Baker, and those two had an incredible rivalry, which if you haven't heard of, you need to definitely go look this up. I'll put a link below to a great article. An even more fierce rivalry, if you ask me, than Scott and Allen. But yeah, they pushed each other, they pushed the sport. But Newby-Fraser was the one that was unstoppable on the bike, and her 1992 finish was the most impressive. She finally broke the 9-hour mark, going 8:55, which stood 17 years until 2009, with a margin of 26 minutes that day. If Mark Allen calls this one of the best performances of all time, you know it certainly is. But up next is the one that finally broke Paula Newby-Fraser's record, and that was Chrissy Wellington, who had a relatively short career compared to the other women on this list. She was still an amateur at 29 years old, and it was only until after she'd won the ITU Worlds for her age group in 2006 that she decided to quit her day job and go all in. And from there, I don't know if we've seen anybody more consistent and more dominant. She was undefeated at the full distance, including 4 Kona titles, 3 Challenge Roth titles, one including that 8:18 that she went back in the day without the aerodynamics and bikes that we have today and the carbon shoes. It just was a mind-blowing performance. So in 2009, she broke Paula's record, fastest bike split, and a 3:03 run, which was really good for the time. And she missed 2010 due to illness. Mirinda Carefree took her title, but she came back in 2011 despite having a recent bike crash, one where her coach Dave Scott said she actually shouldn't be on the start line, yet she unbelievably ran a 2:52 to take Carfree down and take her title back. And she was just so good that she often beat a lot of the men in the field. And yeah, surprisingly, her nickname was Muppet, and she said, yes, it's for the reasons you would think. But next up is Natascha Badmann, the Swiss Miss, 6-time Ironman world champion, so just behind Paula Newby-Fraser there. Of those, for me, probably her 2005 performance was the most impressive. We talked about Karen Thurig, the pro cyclist, there a second ago. She was just 2 minutes off of her coming off the bike and then still managed to run a 3:06 marathon afterwards. And sadly for her, she probably could have picked up a couple more Kona titles, but she had a terrible crash in 2007 where she was unfortunately due to a motorcycle in a construction zone, and she was told by doctors she would never swim again. But somehow, miraculously, she managed to come back and race all the way up into her 50s, retiring there in 2017. So just a legend all around on and off the course. But yes, on the bike, absolutely unbelievable. But that was a tough list on its own to come up with because there's some other good names that I could have mentioned. Karen Smyers, Julie Dibbins, and Heather Jackson, of course. Her bike power was remarkable as well. But those names that I mentioned were the top ones for me. But before we talk about the incredible triathlon cyclists of today, let me mention again to you buycycle.com, the world's leading global pre-owned marketplace where you can buy and sell bikes of all different shapes, sizes, colors, and types, and I couldn't recommend them enough, especially if you've got a bike laying around in the garage that you want to get rid of and pick up some cash leading into the season ahead. Or if you're trying to buy a bike, I seriously recommend you head to the website and check it out. I was blown away the first time I looked at it and read everything about it. They are such a premium company that offers everything from buyer and seller protection to going the extra mile and organizing all the shipping logistics of when you sell your bike. They'll deliver a bike box to your door and they'll organize for somebody to come pick it up. The listing experience of listing a bike is super straightforward and easy. You could do it in 5 minutes as I did the other day, and immediately I had offers in my inbox for my bike. And use the link on screen and in the description for an exclusive offer for the Daily Tri community. All right, back to it, and like I said, this one was tough. Check out these names that didn't quite make it on my top 10 list. As I did with the men's, I'm gonna go 10th through 6th in no particular order, and then I'm gonna go 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 as the greatest cyclist of today. But keep in mind, as I did for the men, I considered how the dynamics of the race play into this list. For example, if somebody's out on their own, out of the swim, and they have to ride solo the whole time, or if they're more of a pack rider. And then depending on whether the courses are flat or hilly, it can really change up how good a cyclist is. And also, of course, with distances, where are they able to do it over short, middle, and long distance? But basically, if I had to pick, with all these athletes lined up at the race, who am I picking ahead of the other athletes for the fastest bike splits? And that's how I came up with this list, with a lot of deliberation. Trust me, it was a lot of hours coming up with this list. But let's start it off. We've got Lisa Norden up first. I could not complete a list without the current world's fastest bike split at the long distance. She is the Swedish time trial national champion multiple times over. She's had a challenging year in 2024 for personal reasons, somehow still pulled together a respectable season. But it was in 2022 and 2023 where, to me, she was incredibly impressive, and capped off by that Ironman Western Australia ride where she rode 4:21, outriding most of the field there by over 10 minutes, including the likes of Lottie Wilms and Els Visser. And Fenella Langridge, a great bike rider in her own right, was just under 10 minutes behind her off the bike. So on her day and in form, I think she can compete with almost anybody on this list. And I'm so excited to see her get back into full form. But on to the next person who falls into that category of who often rides alone, and that makes me even more impressed with her biking skills. And that is Lucy Charles Barkley. Always out of the swim at first, we know that, but somehow manages to ride alone despite the fact that all the women behind her are usually coming in a pack or working together. She's off at the front, holding them off just like she did in Kona with the fastest bike split there in 2023. Outriding Taylor Knibb there, but we'll get to Taylor Knibb in a bit. But yeah, she's super consistent with her running off the bike as well, which makes her an even more impressive rider to me. But sadly for her, it's been a bit of an up and down roller coaster the last few years, and we'll have to wait and see whether she can get back into that form she was in coming into Kona in 2023, which she attributes a lot to the amount of indoor riding that she used to improve her power. But we gotta add in some short course athletes here, and I've gone with Georgia Taylor Brown in here. She's not too sure what she's gonna do with triathlon at the moment, but for me, I had to put her in here because she was part of that Tokyo performance that earned her a silver medal there. And she flatted right at the end of the bike course, but she was part of that breakaway that was so impressive on that day. And the mixed relay, I think her performance there often gets forgotten about. That earned her team a gold medal. She was away solo on the bike, managed to outride everybody but Taylor Knibb as well to gain her team even more of a lead on that day. And I think thanks to her is a big reason they got that gold medal. But yeah, if there's ever been a breakaway in short course, she is there, just like she was in Cagliari in 2022, where she won that race. And then even at the middle distance, when she tried it out in 2024 in Bahrain, she had the second fastest bike split. And that included the likes of Carolyn Pohl, who was a phenomenal rider in her own right. She was also invited to the EF Education Pro Cycling Camp, which is an honor. And obviously they recognize how good she is on two wheels. So looking forward to seeing how she mixes it up with the pro cycling community. Next up then, a hard one for me to have here, but that is Kat Matthews, especially after what we saw her do at Nice this year. If you took Laura Philipp out of that race, Kat Matthews' ride was so incredibly impressive. And I think for me, why I had to have her here in this top 10 list was because she is so consistent, and that to me means everything. I mean, the fact that she was able to do it at the full distance, at the Pro Series, alongside the T100 Tour, at so many races, and was like outriding Lucy Charles Barkley at T100 London. And I still think her best years are ahead of her, especially if she's not racing as much. She can train the bike more. She's relatively late to joining in as a pro compared to a lot of these women, and we all know how much she wants it. And yeah, again, another one who just runs incredibly well off of the bike, and that's probably why her bike might get forgotten about a little bit, because of how good she runs. Next up then is Paula Findlay. This one, I'm not gonna lie, I debated about a little bit. I almost thought of putting India Lee here instead of Paula, because she's outridden Paula a fair bit recently. T100 Ibiza and Miami in 2024, for example. And also India Lee has managed to do it at the long distance at the likes of Ironman Israel and Florida. But Paula is again just one of those who's incredibly consistent and runs so solid off of it as well. And the fact that she's able to do it alongside racing like the time trial national championships and world championships for Canada makes her just in that next league up for me. And like Kat, I also think her best years are ahead of her. She's stepping up to the full distance. Can she translate that middle distance power to the full distance? We'll have to see. But that brings us to the top 5, and you're probably guessing who that is about now. But you might not have guessed this one. At number 5 for me is Maya Kingma. If you followed her career, you will know how good she is on the swim and the bike. She's a Dutch athlete who's currently unsure of her future plans, but it looks like the middle distance is certain, and I am personally extremely excited to see how well she goes. When you see her performances like what she did at Carlo Vivari in 2024, where she broke away from the field and put down the power on that tough course. She sadly battled with injuries, having surgery last year, but she still pulled off a 7th place at the Olympics to follow up from an 11th place at Tokyo that she's had before. And she also was invited, like Georgia Taylor Brown, to that EF Education cycling camp. And I think if she gets her injuries under control and this middle distance suits her, we could maybe see her up there challenging someone you know who's at number 1 on this list. At number 4 then, I've got a youngster here, Lucy Byram, currently just 25 years old and getting better and better each year. We really noticed her explode onto the spotlight in 2023, especially in the PTO US Open, where she got 4th in a stacked field there. But she's even better than then, if you ask me, on the bike. In Vegas in 2024, she was 2nd off the bike, even though she had a penalty there. And in Dubai, she was even better, only 2 minutes off of Taylor there. And she's just been consistently outriding the likes of Paula Findlay, as well as Laura Phillip and Kat Matthews. And to me, that's just insane for her age. And when you peek behind the curtain a little bit and you see that her coach is Jacob Tipper, who's an elite cyclist himself. He was part of the Hoob Watt Bike test team. He was also part of the Sub 7, Sub 8 project for Joe Skipper as well. So you know this guy knows a thing or two about aerodynamics and cycling, and he's obviously passed that on to Lucy. But yeah, in her own right, she is phenomenal, and I can't wait to watch her continually develop in the sport. Then at number 3, hard one to put here, but Flora Duffy, the Olympic gold medalist, but also 2 times ITU world champion and 5 times Xterra world champion, which I myself even forget about. But yeah, when you come from Xterra, you know you must be good on 2 wheels, and she certainly is. And that's part of the reason why she got that gold medal in Tokyo. She was part of that breakaway with Georgia Taylor Brown, and her run, like Kat Matthews and a couple of these others, is probably why she also doesn't get remembered as much for her bike skills. But we saw it again at Paris, where she was out the water first and onto the bike, charging ahead alone. Unfortunately, she wasn't able to pull off that breakaway, but still a 5th place there after all her injuries that almost ended her career, remember, was remarkable in my opinion. But even though she didn't quite pull off the breakaway at that race, she pulled it off in 2018 in Bermuda, and probably the best breakaway that I can remember in women's short course history, where she rode the entire thing solo there to take the win in her home country over a great field that included the likes of Vicky Holland and Katie Zafiris, and we haven't seen a breakaway quite like that one before. So there's no doubt in my mind, Laura deserves to be here. And the fact that she can do it at both the short and the middle distance on the time trial bike makes it even more impressive to me, because certainly not everyone can make that transition. Number 2 is Laura Philipp. And if you'd have told me maybe last year that I would have put Laura at number 2 of the best cyclists currently in triathlon, I probably wouldn't have agreed with myself. But as it stands right now, after her 2024 Nice performance, where she rode arguably one of the top 3 best bike performances we've ever seen in the sport, it was impossible for me not to put her here. And again, like several of these others, the fact that she rides so consistently across her races and also does it alone a lot of the time, kind of like Lucy, but on the other end of the spectrum, where she often comes out quite a bit behind on the swim and then has to work a lot of the time solo on the bike, just like she did at Lahti at the 2023 70.3 World Champs. Makes it even more impressive to me when you can do it on your own. But it really was Nice where she showcased what bike riding's all about, with just climbing, skills, bike handling, descending, all of it was there on display, and can't wait to see if she can translate that bike performances onto more courses like Kona coming up again soon. That leaves number 1, and you've all guessed it, you all know it yourselves, it is Taylor Knibb, unquestionably the greatest cyclist currently, and we're all thinking about it, who probably is on track with her career trajectory to being the greatest of all time, alongside some of those other legends we talked about like Daniela Ryf. We've seen her do it at every distance and in the same year, like in 2024, where she races short course races, is at the front of the bike all the time. Then she races and wins the time trial US Nationals, goes to the Olympics, races the time trial there alongside the individual triathlon and the mixed relay, where that mixed relay performance is gotta be one of her best of all time, and really earned the US that silver medal. The only time she's really been beat recently was in Kona in 2023 by Lucy Charles-Barkley. Way too much time into her opponents in most races, and the fact that a pro cycling team like Trek Segafredo had to get her on their roster after seeing what she could do on a bike is a true testament to that. And after knocking the T100 out of the park last year undefeated, I really think she'll be all eyes on Kona going forward. Sounds like she's not as interested in short course right now, with the courses really not favoring the cyclists at the moment. That's probably why I don't have so many short course athletes on this list. They don't really get to showcase their strengths as well. But yeah, it's probably full distance for her, as well as probably committing to the pro cycling world. So yeah, excited to see where Taylor goes in the future with this power, and will anybody be able to close that gap to her? We'll have to wait and see. She's got a huge target on her back. But thank you guys so much for watching this one. It takes a ton of time to put this all together, so if you consider supporting the channel for more videos like this, please do drop in the description and click on that Patreon link. It would mean a lot to keep this going, and have a good one. See ya.